Hey ladies and gentlemen, Christoph the Polish Geek, and welcome to the review of one of my favorite video games of all time, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. This is literally one of my favorite video games of all time, and there has just been a Switch port. Although I'll talk very little about the changes between the GameCube version and the Switch version because this is not a review of a Switch port. This is a review of an actual game, basically of both versions of the game. I will talk very little of the changes since thankfully there aren't that many, but Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is literally one of my favorite video games of all time. I first played this game in my boarding school in Rhode Island. I remember that we've had a GameCube and a Wii upstairs in our lounge in my dorm, and my friend brought Paper Mario: Thousand Year Door to school. He even did a playthrough of it and posted on YouTube, although his channel seemingly has been taken down, so there is sadly no way to find videos of that playthrough right now, but oh well. Still, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is literally one of my favorite video games of all time. It's likely in the top 5 actually, and I love that game so much, and I still have so many fond memories of playing that magnificent game back at my boarding school and how I beaten it and it felt so good. And now there is a Switch port. I remember I loved the game so much that I immediately actually went to a Nintendo store that was actually close to my house actually, and I bought a Wii because it didn't have a GameCube, and also, but thankfully since Wii was backwards compatible with GameCube, I was able also to buy Paper Mario: Thousand Year Door. Although the clips you'll see in the video will be actually from the Switch version because the Wii is now in the basement and it's not being used, so yes, the clips you'll see in that video will be from the Switch version, but it really makes no difference because when I did top 5 video games that Nintendo should remaster, I said that there shouldn't be any changes at all. And while I won't deny that there are a few changes, thankfully they are so tiny that they don't really change the game. So, Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is one of my favorite video games of all time. Let's get to it. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is by far my favorite Mario game ever. One of my favorite Nintendo games, one of my favorite JRPGs together with Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger, and in general, one of my favorite video games of all time. Like, the game looks really great and the paper art of this game is simply amazing and phenomenal and unique, and everything looks so colorful and the character models are so nicely detailed. And slightly more detailed in the remastered, but I think the original GameCube version still holds up very, very well. And the paper nature of the world sometimes leads to really bizarre and awkward moments, such as when part of the screen literally peels away or tears open to reveal the secret area. Or how you can turn into a paper sailing boat or a plane. I really love it so much. This is so bizarre, but just so amazing and unique. The game mixes the exploration, conversation, and battle-heavy gameplay found in JRPGs like Final Fantasy with platforming elements that perfectly fit in the Mario universe. And the whole world is so charming and you really want to explore every corner of the world. And every area is so brilliantly imagined and you just don't want to leave because you just love playing the game so much and you have such a great time. I really love the story in this game. Mario games generally have almost no story, just Super Mario rescuing Princess Peach from Bowser, and that's pretty much it. I mean, Mario RPG, which I reviewed only a few months ago, changed that, but the Paper Mario series very much though they perfected it. And Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door has a really great story. Actually, it has the best story in any Mario game. And the story is that Princess Peach gets kidnapped, but this time it's actually not by Bowser, but by this much more evil guy named Grodus and the X-Nauts.
And Mario embarks on a journey to find 7 crystal stars to unlock the titular Thousand Year Door. While this might seem like a pretty paper thin story, but likable, amazing characters, and the fact that almost every chapter contains its own self contained story more than makes up for it. Because as Mario seeks the 7 crystal stars, he goes to couple different areas, each that has its own self-contained story, and every story is incredible. The game is pretty episodic too, but that works very much in its favor because, as I just said, in addition to the main story itself, every chapter has a story of its own. Like Glitzville, for example, which is a city in the clouds. It's a classic Gladiator Star games where you have to keep fighting enemies on the ring and climb on the very top. Petal Meadows and Petalburg, on the other hand, is a Koopa village, and they are terrorized by a red dragon, Hooktail, and you embark on a journey to a castle where, of course, you fight Hooktail as a boss. And that's also where you get the first Crystal Star. This is basically a most classic Mario chapter. And there is also a chapter where you go with Pirate Flavio on an island called Keyhole Key, and the story is basically a Pirates of the Caribbean treasure hunt adventure story. And there is also an area where you go on a train and examine a crime mystery, a neo-noir detective story. And then you also even travel to the moon. I love all those diverse chapters and areas and their individual stories so much. And then there is the main area itself, which is Rogueport, and I really love the Rogueport location. This is the location where you can buy some stuff, where you return at the end of every chapter, where you can buy some stuff, some power-ups, but also this is the very area where Thousand Year Door is actually located, and every time you complete a chapter, you return to the Thousand Year Door and put an additional crystal star until you have them all, and that's when the Thousand Year Door opens and the final dungeon begins. But also, I also really love Rogueport because of its lore and wonderful story that I will not say much. I really think you should play the game to find out for yourself. All I will say, the lore and the story of Rogueport is incredible. When I reviewed Super Mario RPG and said that the game had a great story by standards of Mario games, because Mario games have almost no story, in case of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, I'm going to go much further, because Paper Mario Thousand Year Door has a very incredible story, but it's not just an incredible story by standards of a Mario game. No, if it was any other JRPG, and the story would still be very incredible. This is simply an incredible story with amazing characters. And as I've been saying, but it's also very, very much a Mario game. And what type of an amazing story would be complete without amazing characters? And the characters in Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door are fantastic and compelling. Of course, there is Super Mario himself, like our favorite Nintendo icon. Who doesn't love Super Mario? I mean, he's a silent protagonist in this game and he doesn't say a single word. But come on, he's Mario. We all love Mario. And all of his companions that join him on his journey are so amazing and compelling. I really love Goombella, and she's the type of very smart girl that you'd very much want in your company. And she also has this lovable charm to her. Actually, fun fact, my friend from my boarding school that introduced me to this game actually told me he used to have a child crush on her. Kind of funny. And then there is Koops too. A Koopa who doesn't have much confidence but tries to prove himself on his journey with Mario. My least favorite of Mario's companions is Madame Flurry, actually. There is not really much to her character, and I only use her occasionally when I really need her. And then there's my favorite one of Mario's companions, Vivian. Like, she's so sweet and so lovable, and she also has one of my favorite redemption arcs in video game history. I just love Vivian. And then there is Bobbery, and he has an amazing backstory, and I mean, very sad one, but also very amazing one, and it makes perfect sense in the context of why he joins Mario on his journey. All of Mario's companions are great and very compelling. And also, each of them has a very unique ability, and depending on their abilities, different ones can be used in a battle. Like Goombella has an ability that allows you to read enemies' weakness, and also be able to see their health and the best way to defeat them, while Vivian gives you an ability to turn into a shadow and avoid getting hit by powerful attacks, while Bobbery helps you blow things up. Oh, and another companion you get is a Kid Yoshi, and what I really love about Kid Yoshi is that he's almost like basically this type of little friend you have that looks up to you, and yet he's probably the most powerful of all the companions in the game. And you also get to choose a name for him, and usually when I give him a name, I always choose for something related to my childhood. It can vary. I also really love the Bowser sequences in this game. Like, yes, you actually get the short time to play as Bowser each time you finish a chapter. Yes, there is then a short Bowser sequence where you actually get to play as Bowser, and everything involving Bowser is so funny because Bowser in this game is a pretty comedic character, and he really isn't much of a threat to Mario, even if he himself very much thinks he is, and he clearly wants to be. And some of the few levels that you play as him, they are actually very clearly modeled after the very original NES Mario game, and I think they are a really nice inclusion in the game. The main villains of the game, which are Grotesque and his minions the X-Nauts, are really good villains, and even though you can see that they are sort of a parody of the Empire from Star Wars, still, they actually fit wonderfully into the Mario universe. But who really steals the whole thing of the villains is actually Grotesque's second in command, Lord Crump. Like, Lord Crump is really awesome, he looks awesome, he's really funny, and his boss battles, and he actually has a couple of them, are actually some of the best boss battles in the whole game. The dialogue between the characters is surprisingly very well written in this game. It both manages to give characters depth and really enhance the story, while also very much stay true to the Mario spirit and Nintendo spirit as a whole, with its charm and comedy. I mean, the new dialogue in the remake is slightly different than it was in the original, but we'll get to it later because either way, it's a very incredible dialogue that you'd very much expect from Nintendo. But as I said, it's also very well written and it very much gives characters depth and greatly enhances an amazing story. If you really want the example of a really funny and brilliant dialogue in Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, then I suggest you talk to Luigi. Luigi actually doesn't really have any role in the story. He's just in Rogueport constantly when you can just talk to him and he will generally tell you about his own adventure that he just experienced. Again, that doesn't really play anything into the story, but I still recommend to talk to him because this is just so funny. Or almost anything involving Bowser is also ultra funny, but my favorite is actually here when he meets Lord Crump, the second in command of Grotesque. Yep, this is likely the funniest moment in the game, in my opinion, actually. The gameplay is great. Combat, for example, is a typical JRPG turn-based combat, but what differs this game from other JRPGs is that when you see an enemy on the map, you can actually strike an enemy first and initiate the combat, which means you get the first turn. But same way, the enemy can also initiate the combat. And then they get the first turn. When you defeat the enemies, you get star points, and when you get 100 star points, then you level up. And you can choose to either level up your HP FP, or badges. Speaking of badges, the more badges you equip, the more abilities you have. I really love the enemy variety in this game. It's much bigger than it is in the classic Mario games and makes perfect sense. The game literally feels like an expanded take on the whole Mario universe, which it is, and all the enemies feel very much at home. There are plenty of different new variations of the classic Mario enemies, but there are also enemies that are entirely new, and yet they all wonderfully fit in the Mario universe, and they are all mechanically different, like depending on the area you're in, you might have to use different mechanics to defeat those enemies. And the boss battles are excellent. They are the most unique bosses in the Mario game. Like for example, there are dragons, Hooktail and Gloomtail, and they are more like something you'd expect out of a Final Fantasy game than a Mario game, but yet they just perfectly fit well in the context of the game. And there's also Macho Graba, Cortez. All the battles with Lord Crump are amazing, some of the best in the whole game, but my favorite boss by far is actually the final boss. But I will not talk about the final boss here, that's for you to see for yourself. All I will say, the final boss is by far my favorite boss in the whole game. And there is also an optional bonus challenge that I really love. It's called a Pit of the 100 Trials, and basically right next to the 1000-year door, there is a green classic Mario pipe where you enter, and that's how you get Pit of the 100 Trials. And what you do in the Pit of the 100 Trials is that you actually go through classic green Mario pipes lower and lower and fight various different enemies. And Pit of the 100 Trials contains even more unique enemies that you actually cannot find anywhere else in the game, and they get harder each time. Pit of the 100 Trials is very, very difficult, but it's amazing, and I think it's very much worth it. And at the bottom of the Pit of the 100 Trials, there is one more boss. One of the best bosses in the entire game, but I won't say any more. This is another thing I think you need to find out for yourself. What I will say is that the boss at the bottom of the Pit of the 100 Trials is one of my favorite bosses in the entire game. And again, as I said, it's a bonus boss, and he is one of the very hardest ones. And speaking of bonus bosses, I also know that in the Switch port, you can actually find the original champion of Glitzville, Prince Moosh, although I admit I haven't fought him yet, but I do plan to unlock him at some point and fight him. I heard he's like one of the hardest bosses in the game, which kind of contrasts with his appearance, but yep, I really want to fight Prince Moosh and will try to my best to unlock him at some point. Paper Mario: The 1000-Year Door is one of those video games that you feel was made with so much love and passion and effort. The game is so charming, has so much heart, and a mix of classic Mario with a compelling story and characters that you expect in JRPGs is just so well done and works so well. Finally, I will talk about some changes between the original and the remake. Maybe actually closer to the remaster, because the changes don't really change much. Like, yes, the remake certainly has upgraded visuals and remixed music, but those aren't really differences, especially that you can actually equip a Nostalgic Tunes badge and get old music, which I admit I do because I love old music. But there are some other changes. Some I like, while others I'm kind of iffy on. Like, they certainly do not ruin the game for me, but I do admit I do miss some of the original dialogue from the original GameCube version. Not saying this dialogue is very different, like, it's still very well written, but at the same time I felt that the dialogue in the original was slightly more cheesy, actually. And another change is that in the remake we also get in the intro a whole backstory of what happened to the town of Rogueport. And while I do think it's amazingly and creatively told and it looks awesome how it's basically told for a paper puppet show, but at the same time I also did love how you uncovered the lore of Rogueport and the sunken town as you were playing the game. So that's a perfect example of a change I'm kind of iffy on. Like, I can see both good things and bad things about it. And as I said, dialogue was also slightly changed. And while I don't think the new dialogue is bad, it's still pretty much the same thing. But at the same time, as I said, I did slightly like the cheese of the GameCube version. But again, that's not really much of a difference.
Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is one of my favorite video games of all time. It's the best Mario game by far. It's also one of my favorite JRPGs, and again, one of my favorite video games ever. And I'm so glad it got a Switch port, and now more people can finally experience this masterpiece. I still own the GameCube port, but as I said, my Wii's in the basement anyway, and now finally more people will finally get to experience this masterpiece. And as I've been saying, there are a few changes actually, some I'm kind of iffy on, but ultimately they don't really change the game all that much. It's still pretty much the same amazing game that I loved back when I first played it and still adore now. So ladies and gentlemen, here is my review of one of my favorite video games of all time. And this is the video that I actually very much been wanting to make since the creation of the channel, actually. And here we are. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for checking out this video. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel. And if you own a Nintendo Switch, please buy Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. And talk to you later. Bye!